Why would a loving God place you in a family that feels more like a battlefield than a sanctuary? Why would your earliest memories be marked by tension, criticism, neglect, or silence, instead of safety, love, and belonging? It's a question that has haunted many of God's chosen ones. But what if I told you it wasn't a mistake? What if your placement was intentional, a divine assignment? What if being born into dysfunction wasn't a curse, but a calling? In this message, I want to speak directly to the ones who have felt out of place since birth, the ones who were the different child, the emotionally aware soul in a house of silence, the sensitive heart in a room full of hard edges. You were never weak. You were wired for something greater. God placed you in that environment not to punish you, but to prepare you, to break what needed to be broken, to heal what no one else was willing to confront, to carry what your ancestors could not. This is not just about pain, it's about purpose. So if you've been carrying the weight of a heavy past, stay with me. Because in the next few moments, you're going to see your life and your family through a divine lens. And when you do, the burden will start to break. Let's begin. Divine strategy. Why you were chosen. Let's begin with something that might feel hard to accept. You were chosen on purpose, for a purpose. Before you ever opened your eyes, before your first cry echoed through the room, your spirit was already known in heaven. Jeremiah 1:5 tells us plainly, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." That means where you were born was never random. The family you were placed into, even if toxic, broken, dysfunctional, was not a mistake. It was strategy. God doesn't send his strongest warriors to the easiest battles. He sends them to the front lines, to the places where healing is most needed. And if you're watching this, I need you to know, you are one of those warriors. You were sent into a lineage full of pain, not to drown in it, but to break it. You were born into chaos, not to be consumed by it, but to conquer it. God's chosen ones are often planted in the darkest soil, because he knows what kind of roots they'll grow. He knows they'll rise differently. He knows they'll carry light no matter how thick the darkness. But here's what makes it so hard. When you're in that toxic family system, it feels like punishment. You start to wonder if something's wrong with you, why you feel so deeply, why you see things others ignore, why you're the one being mistreated, misunderstood, or singled out. But hear this clearly. It's not because you're flawed. It's because you're different by design. You're wired for divine sensitivity. And that sensitivity, that's not weakness. It's your signal. It means you carry spiritual sight. It means you've been sent ahead of your generation as a bridge, not a victim. And that bridge must be built through understanding. Let's look at it this way. God never wastes a placement. There are no accidents in the divine. He places light inside darkness, not to humiliate the light, but to overcome the dark. You were chosen to carry out what others refused to touch, to say what others stayed silent about, to confront the spiritual patterns that kept your family in cycles of pain. Cycles of addiction, emotional neglect, abuse, generational silence, all of it. And here's the mystery, those things often hide behind the word normal. But you were born with eyes that could see through normal. You could sense the lies behind the laughter. You could feel the coldness in the room no one else talked about. You were the one who couldn't ignore it, even when others told you to, because you weren't meant to adapt to dysfunction. You were meant to transform it. Let that truth sink in. God trusted you with what broke others. He trusted you to see what others avoided. He trusted you to carry light into a place that was choking on darkness, and to survive long enough to shine. That's why your childhood didn't look like the movies. That's why your family story felt like a silent war. Because your calling was never comfort, it was clarity. And with clarity comes responsibility. So now you face a decision. Will you continue to see your story through the lens of pain, or will you start seeing it through the lens of divine strategy? Because once you understand this, everything changes. That feeling of isolation, that wasn't abandonment, it was preservation. That rejection from your own blood, that wasn't cruelty, it was separation for elevation. God had to hide you in plain sight, even from your own family, so he could protect the purity of your spirit. The enemy tried to distort your identity from the beginning because he knew who you were before you did, but not anymore. You're awakening now, and I want you to type this in the comments if you feel this rising inside you. 333. I'm chosen, not cursed. Type it boldly. Let it echo spiritually. And if you haven't already, subscribe now. Because this message is just beginning. This channel is a space of healing, truth, and prophetic insight for chosen ones just like you. If this resonated, you're not alone anymore. You're part of a rising remnant. Let me leave you with this. You didn't miss your calling. You didn't get the wrong life. You were strategically sent, and the pain you've walked through is about to be the platform you rise from. Let's keep going. Your story is just getting started. The sacred contract of your soul. There are moments in life that don't make sense until you zoom out, until you stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, what did I agree to before I came here? Because here's a truth few ever talk about. Your soul said yes before your body ever took its first breath. You see, the idea of a sacred contract is not just spiritual theory. It's rooted in divine understanding. Your existence on this earth is not random. It is the fulfillment of an assignment that was written in the eternal before you entered time. Some people are born into comfort. You were born into combat. Not physical warfare, but spiritual confrontation. A family line that needed breaking, cycles that needed ending, pain that had been passed down like inheritance until it landed in your hands. And heaven whispered, this one won't pass it on. Your soul agreed to carry what others buried, to heal what others ignored, to walk through fire, not because you deserved pain, but because you were strong enough to come out refined. Think about Esther. She didn't choose her position in the palace. She didn't plan to stand between her people and destruction. But when the moment came, the truth was undeniable. You were born for such a time as this, Esther 4:14. And that's the same truth resting on your life. You didn't choose every detail of your childhood, but your soul was assigned to that bloodline for a reason. Not for survival, but for transformation. Let's go deeper. Some of you felt disconnected from your family from an early age. You saw things differently, felt things more deeply, questioned things no one else wanted to talk about. And while others were trying to fit in, you were silently wondering why nothing felt right. That wasn't dysfunction, that was divine disruption. The Holy Spirit was already stirring in you, even when you couldn't name it. That ache, that awareness, that quiet inner nudge, it was heaven marking you as set apart. Joseph's story echoes this. Loved by God, hated by his brothers, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, falsely accused, forgotten in prison, all before being elevated to a position of influence that saved nations. Why? Because his destiny wasn't about him alone. It was about the generations after him. When Joseph finally stood before his brothers, the same ones who betrayed him, he said something that reveals the heart of this sacred contract. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Genesis chapter 50:20. This is not just a line from scripture. This is your story in motion. What others used to hurt you, God is using to position you, and that's the weight of being chosen. You don't get to walk easy paths. You don't get to stay silent in dysfunction. You don't get to pretend it doesn't hurt, because your soul agreed to feel it all, and then transform it all. You are the interrupter of cycles, the disruptor of generational patterns, the vessel through which healing, truth, and love will flow. But let's be honest, the cost is high. There are days you've questioned your strength. Nights you've cried out, wondering if you were being punished. Moments when the weight felt unbearable. But listen closely, you are not being punished. You are being forged. A sacred soul contract is not signed in comfort. It's written in calling. And calling requires refinement. The family you were born into, that was the altar where the process began. That place of pain became the place where your spiritual eyes were opened, where your compassion was born, where your boundaries became necessary, where your discernment was sharpened, where your voice, though silenced, began to carry fire. This isn't New Age affirmation. This is ancient truth. God knew exactly what you'd walk through, and He also knew exactly what you'd carry out of it. The enemy thought he could break you early, but all he did was trigger your awakening. You see, a sacred contract doesn't promise an easy life, but it does promise eternal purpose. And now you're remembering it, not with your head, but with your soul. Something in you is rising, the part of you that always knew. There's more to my story than pain. You didn't come here just to survive, you came to restore. And the restoration begins the moment you remember, I agreed to this, and I was born ready. Family pain is not punishment. Let's say this clearly. The pain you experienced in your family was not God punishing you. It was never about shame. It was never because you were unworthy, unlovable, or forgotten. It was preparation. I know. That's hard to hear when your earliest memories still sting. Maybe you remember the silence more than the words. Maybe you remember being blamed for things that weren't your fault. Maybe you were the peacemaker in a house that never knew peace. Maybe you learned how to walk on eggshells before you ever learned how to walk in confidence. But through it all, you didn't become bitter. You became aware. Psalm 34:18 says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." So let me ask you, if you were broken early, could it be because God wanted to be close to you early? Could it be that your suffering was not divine neglect, but divine nearness? When we're brokenhearted, God doesn't run from us. He leans in. And sometimes the breaking is what softens our hearts enough to hear Him. That family pain, the criticism, rejection, absence, control, it didn't ruin your destiny, it revealed your assignment. Chosen ones are often given front row seats to dysfunction, not to normalize it, but to expose it. You didn't fit in, not because you were the problem, but because you were sent in as a solution. And here's where it gets deeper. Your wounds, though invisible to others, carry spiritual meaning. Every time you cried alone in your room wondering why no one understood you, heaven was listening. Every time you tried to speak truth and were silenced, heaven took record. Every moment you were treated like the outsider in your own home, heaven was preparing you to be a forerunner. You were never meant to be like them. You were meant to lead them out. And leading starts with healing. Let's be real. That kind of pain changes you. It makes you hyper-aware of others' emotions. It makes you cautious with your trust. It makes you question your own value when love is given conditionally or withheld completely. But here's the powerful twist. That very pain becomes your activation. The same rejection that hurt you taught you how to accept others without judgment. The same emotional absence you endured taught you how to be emotionally present for the next generation. The same silence you grew up with taught you the power of voice, of truth, of breaking the cycle. Pain didn't make you less, it made you deep. It made you wise. It made you sensitive. It made you dangerous to darkness because now you see. You see patterns where others see normal. You see generational habits that have spiritual roots. You see how trauma gets passed down like a family heirloom until someone rises and says no more. And that someone is you. That's why the enemy tried to shut you down early. Why he used people close to you to plant lies in your heart. Lies like, you're too much, you're too sensitive, you're imagining things, you'll never be good enough. But what the enemy tried to label as weakness was actually your divine wiring. You feel deeply because you were born to heal deeply. You notice what others ignore because you were called to interrupt it. You've carried burdens in silence because God was building a strength in you that needed no validation, only mission. Listen, this isn't about blaming your family, it's about understanding your role in the story. You don't have to hate them to heal. You don't have to carry bitterness to carry boundaries. You don't have to stay wounded to stay aware. Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's your way of breaking the agreement that their actions get to define your future. This is where healing begins, not by rewriting your childhood, but by reframing it through God's perspective. Your pain wasn't a detour, it was a doorway. And now, that doorway is opening. You've been carrying silent scars that heaven calls sacred. You've been misunderstood in places where you were meant to reveal truth. You've been overlooked because God was hiding you for the right time, and that time is now. The pain wasn't random. It wasn't punishment. It was a holy preparation. And now that you know that, you can stop hiding your story, because your story isn't just what happened to you. It's what God is about to do through you. Let me know when you're ready for part 4. Breaking generational cycles. Breaking generational cycles. You were not sent here to repeat what broke you. You were sent here to end it. Chosen ones carry a specific assignment: to step into family lines full of dysfunction, trauma, pain, addiction, abuse, neglect, and interrupt it. Let me tell you plainly, generational curses are real, patterns are real. Spiritual cycles run through bloodlines until someone wakes up enough to say, "It stops here." That someone is you. You were not born into that toxic family by accident. You were born into it as a breaker, a healer, a restorer. And here's what you need to know. Breaking generational cycles is not about physical strength. It's about spiritual awareness. Most people stay trapped in family patterns because they don't see them. What they call normal is actually bondage. What they call tradition is actually trauma dressed up over time. What they laugh about is really what's destroying them silently. But you see it. That's why you feel so different. That's why you can't stomach certain conversations. That's why your heart aches at the things others brush off. It's because you weren't sent to adapt. You were sent to transform. Zechariah 13:9 says, "I will refine them like silver and test them like gold. They will call on my name, and I will answer them." Refining is not comfortable. Breaking cycles is not glamorous. It's hard. It's lonely. It's messy. But it's holy. Let's talk about what generational cycles look like. Addiction doesn't just pass down because of environment. It passes down because of unhealed wounds. Abuse doesn't keep happening because people love pain. It happens because people haven't confronted their own. Neglect, criticism, control, emotional silence, these things become invisible prisons in families. Until someone like you arrives. Someone brave enough to ask hard questions. Someone bold enough to say, "This is not love." Someone strong enough to walk away when necessary. Someone healed enough to love without enabling. You see, breaking generational cycles often starts with awareness. Awareness is painful. Awareness means you can't unsee what you've seen. It means you carry responsibility for what others refuse to face. But here's what I need you to understand. That's not a burden. It's your evidence of being chosen. Chosen ones are given sight others don't have, because they've been called to a mission others won't take. Let me say this again. You are the cycle breaker. But breaking cycles is not just about rejecting the past. It's about rebuilding the future. Isaiah 61 speaks directly to this. They will rebuild the ancient ruins and restore the places long devastated. They will renew the ruined cities that have been devastated for generations. That's your prophecy. That's your assignment. That's your legacy. The enemy tried to convince you that your family pain was proof you were cursed. But in reality, it was proof you were commissioned. Commissioned to build what no one else would. Commissioned to start what no one else could finish. Commissioned to heal what no one else dared to touch. This is why your life feels harder. This is why you face so much resistance. This is why it feels like no one understands you. You weren't sent here for validation. You were sent here for transformation. And breaking cycles will cost you things. It will cost you comfort. It will cost you relationships. It will cost you the illusion of keeping peace when that peace is actually silence in the face of generational dysfunction. But what you gain is priceless. Freedom, healing, legacy, peace that flows forward to generations after you. Let me tell you this. Your future family, your children, their children, they will walk in freedom because of the war you fought in silence. They will never know the pain you carried because you chose to face it head on. They will never inherit your wounds because you chose healing over hiding. This is why you couldn't stay asleep. This is why you couldn't stay numb. This is why you couldn't stay small. Because your calling is bigger than survival. You're not here to escape your family story on Suits. You're here to rewrite it. Let that settle in your spirit. Every prayer you whisper, every boundary you set, every generational pattern you confront, heaven sees it, heaven honors it, and heaven is backing you. You are not alone. You are not weak. You are not cursed. You are the generational cycle breaker. You are the legacy builder. You are the one heaven trusted to say, "It stops here." The greatest shift from victim to healer, chosen one. There comes a moment in your journey where everything changes. It's the moment you stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" And you start declaring, "This happened for me, and now I know what to do with it." That is the greatest shift a chosen one will ever make. It's the shift from victim to healer. Let me say this with love and truth. You were never meant to live your life trapped in the identity of what others did to you. Yes, what happened was unfair. Yes, the pain was real. Yes, the trauma shaped you, but it did not define you. Pain may have been your introduction to this story, but healing is the chapter you were born to write. This is where so many chosen ones get stuck, because no one taught them how to move from pain into purpose. The world teaches us to stay wounded, to stay offended, to stay in survival mode. But the kingdom of God teaches us to forgive, to heal, to lead others out. This is what Jesus taught in Matthew 7:5. He said, "First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye." Translation? Healing starts with you. You cannot heal what you're still hiding. You cannot lead others in freedom while still chained to your past. You cannot carry the title of chosen while living like a victim of your own story. And I say that with compassion, not condemnation, because I know how hard it is. Victimhood feels comfortable at first, because it requires nothing of us but pain. Healing, on the other hand, healing requires responsibility. Healing requires courage. Healing requires honesty. It requires you to confront the mirror, not to condemn yourself, but to reclaim yourself. Here's the truth you need to know. Victimhood keeps you trapped in the energy of what broke you. Healing releases you into the authority of who God created you to be. There is a version of you, stronger, wiser, freer, waiting on the other side of healing. But healing doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. Healing means facing what happened with new vision. Healing means looking at your past and saying, "That was real, but it no longer controls me. That hurt me, but it does not define me. That wounded me, but I am not staying here." Let's get practical. Moving from victim to healer starts with boundaries. Boundaries are not walls of bitterness. They are gates of wisdom. Boundaries say, "I love you, but I will not accept dysfunction. I care for you, but I will not abandon myself to keep your approval. I forgive you, but I will not allow your pain to keep reproducing in me." This is the wisdom chosen ones must walk in. Without boundaries, you stay a victim. With boundaries, you step into the authority of a healer, and healing flows from within, not from changing others. Some of you have been waiting for your family to apologize before you heal, waiting for closure that may never come, waiting for them to see what they refuse to see. But let me tell you something freeing. You don't need their apology to heal. You don't need their approval to rise. You don't need their permission to break free. Healing is between you and God. You are not responsible for their choices. You are responsible for your own healing. This is how you shift from victim to healer. You recognize your story without shame. You set boundaries with wisdom and love. You release bitterness so your heart stays pure. You choose healing even if no one else does. You become the person you always needed. And hear me on this. Healing doesn't mean perfection. Healing doesn't mean the pain disappears overnight. Healing means you refuse to let pain run your life. It means you show up every day with grace for yourself. It means you honor your growth, even when it feels slow. It means you see yourself not as damaged, but as developed. Your scars tell a story, not of defeat, but of survival. Your wounds are proof not of weakness, but of victory. And now, you become the healer your family never had. You become the voice you never heard. You become the safe space you always longed for. Because the greatest legacy a chosen one can leave is not wealth or reputation. It's healing, it's freedom, It's a family line that breathes peace instead of pain. And it all starts with you. This is your shift. This is your rise. From victim to healer, from survival to legacy. Your pain was preparation for purpose, chosen one. What if I told you that every tear you cried, every silent battle you fought, every lonely night you endured was not wasted? What if all of it was preparation, not for punishment, but for purpose? This is where your story takes a prophetic turn, because when you look at your life through human eyes, all you see is pain, rejection, abandonment, betrayal. But when heaven looks at your life, all of it looks like training, preparation for elevation, preparation for authority, preparation for divine purpose. Joseph in the Bible is the perfect example. Remember his story? A dreamer, loved by his father, hated by his brothers, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, falsely accused, forgotten in prison. Every part of Joseph's story looked like disaster, until heaven revealed the strategy behind the suffering. Because years later, when famine hit the land, Joseph was in the perfect position to save nations. And when he stood face to face with the same brothers who betrayed him, he didn't seek revenge. Instead, Joseph said something that every chosen one must remember. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Genesis 50:20. Let that settle in your spirit. What was sent to destroy you was used to develop you. The betrayal broke your heart, but it built your discernment. The rejection wounded your soul, but it sharpened your vision. The loneliness crushed your spirit, but it strengthened your connection to God. This is the mystery of divine preparation. Pain isn't proof that God has abandoned you. Pain is proof that heaven is preparing you. Chosen ones are trained in private before they are revealed in public. Your suffering wasn't random, it was refining. Let's talk about what your pain really produced in you. 1. Emotional resilience. You've survived things that would have crushed other people. You learned how to comfort yourself when no one else did. You learned how to keep going when no one believed in you. You learned how to hold on to hope in the middle of darkness. This emotional strength wasn't born in easy seasons. It was born in battle. 2. Spiritual discernment. Toxic environments taught you to pay attention. You can read a room in seconds. You can feel the energy shift before anyone says a word. You can sense dishonesty, manipulation, or danger long before it shows itself. That's not paranoia. That's discernment. And heaven sharpened that gift in the hardest places. 3. Compassion born. From experience, you don't judge people's wounds, because you know what it feels like to be wounded. You love deeply, you listen intently, you create safe spaces because you know what it's like to grow up without them. Chosen ones don't just carry truth, they carry compassion. That's what makes your leadership different. Anyone can hold power, but only the refined can hold healing power. And healing power comes from walking through what you now help others survive. Your pain didn't make you hard, it made you holy. Your story is not just for survival, it's for service. Because God didn't allow you to walk through fire for no reason. He allowed it so you could walk others out of their fire. You become the guide you never had. You become the example you never saw. You become the protector you always needed. This is divine preparation. It looks like loss, but it's really gain. It looks like delay, but it's really positioning. It looks like isolation, but it's really transformation. The seasons where you felt most forgotten were actually the seasons where heaven was preparing you most deeply. Because when your purpose is great, your preparation will be intense. God will take you the long way to develop your roots. He will hide you to protect your purity. He will test you to strengthen your endurance, not to break you, but to build you. You're not here because life happened to you. You're here because heaven happened through you. Every scar on your soul is now a weapon of healing. Every lesson you learned in the dark is now light for someone else's path. Every storm you survived is now proof that you carry something greater than pain. You carry purpose. Let me remind you, God wastes nothing. Not a tear, not a wound, not a battle. Everything you walked through was shaping you for the assignment you were born to carry. You were never just surviving trauma. You were being trained for legacy. You were never just enduring hardship. You were being equipped for leadership. This is why you couldn't quit. This is why you couldn't stay small. This is why you couldn't stay bitter. Because heaven was preparing you for something bigger than yourself. And now it's time to rise. Not as a victim, not as someone barely surviving, but as a chosen one. Refined by fire, anointed by pain, and ready for purpose. Your story isn't over. It's just beginning. Let me know when you're ready for part 7. Practical wisdom for healing and legacy transformation. Practical wisdom for healing and legacy transformation. Chosen one, now that you understand your pain was preparation, it's time to talk about your next assignment, healing and legacy transformation. Because breaking cycles is not just about what you leave behind, it's about what you build forward. Healing is not a feeling, it's a daily practice. Legacy is not automatic, it's intentional. You didn't come this far just to be free by yourself. You came this far to build something that sets others free. That's how chosen ones operate. You don't just survive. You create new systems, you plant new seeds, you design new ways of being. This is how the curse breaks forever. Let's get very practical. Here's what healing looks like in motion. 1. Recognize your strength. Stop seeing yourself through the lens of what happened to you. Start seeing yourself through the lens of who you became because of it. You are strong, you are wise, you are deeply rooted. Write it down, speak it out loud. Remind yourself daily, I am not who they said I was. I am not limited by my past. I am the healed one. I am the free one. I am the cycle breaker. Identity is reclaimed in repetition. 2. Daily prayer and spiritual alignment. Chosen ones can't afford to move through life without connection to God. Your prayer life doesn't have to be complicated, but it must be consistent. Start every day inviting divine wisdom. God, show me what I cannot see. Reveal what needs healing. Guide my words, actions, and heart. Your alignment in the spirit will shape everything in the physical. Remember Isaiah 61, this is your blueprint. They will rebuild the ancient ruins and restore the places long devastated. That rebuilding starts in prayer. 3. Create a new family culture. This is one of the most powerful things a chosen one can do. You get to decide what your family looks like from here. It doesn't matter if you're single, married, with kids, or without. Culture starts with you. Create an atmosphere of truth over silence, love over control, accountability over blame, boundaries over chaos, peace over fear. Why what you tolerate becomes your family's new normal. What you heal becomes your family's inheritance. You don't have to do it perfectly, son. You just have to do it intentionally. 4. Forgiveness as spiritual authority. Let me tell you, forgiveness is not about forgetting. Forgiveness is about freedom. When you forgive, you are saying, your actions will not control me anymore. You are cutting the spiritual cord between you and that pain. Unforgiveness keeps you chained to the energy of the past. Forgiveness sets you free to create the future. And listen, you might have to forgive people who never apologize. You might have to forgive people who still deny what they did. That's okay. Forgiveness is not about their repentance. It's about your release. 5. Be the safe place you never had. Every chosen one remembers the ache of not having a safe space. Now you get to become that. Be the person who listens. Be the person who speaks truth with love. Be the person who creates calm in chaos. Be the person who shows compassion instead of control. Healing flows through your presence. People might not remember every word you say, but they will remember how they felt around you. Let your life be proof that the cycle really ended with you. 6. Protect your peace like treasure. Not everyone gets access to you. Boundaries are holy. If someone brings chaos, disrespect, manipulation, or drama, you are not obligated to stay connected. Chosen ones move with love, but also with clarity. Protecting your peace is protecting your purpose. You can love people from a distance. You can pray for them without staying entangled with them. God didn't heal you just to send you back into what broke you. 7. Build legacy with intention. This is what it's all about. The final evidence that you are healed is not how loud you talk about your pain. It's how beautifully you build your future. Teach the next generation emotional awareness. Model healthy communication. Show them how to pray. Show them how to set boundaries. Show them how to honor God in daily life. This is legacy. This is spiritual wealth. This is the real inheritance. Chosen one. The pain stops with you. The silence ends with you. The dysfunction dies with you. But the healing, the love, the wisdom, the freedom, that flows through you into everyone connected to your life. Isaiah 61 says you will rebuild the ancient ruins. That's you. You are the builder. You are the healer. You are the legacy. And heaven is smiling because you said yes. Final revelation, you were never broken. Chosen one. Now that you've walked through the fire, broken the cycles, and started rebuilding a new legacy, it's time to reveal a truth that heaven has been waiting for you to understand. You were never broken. You were never ruined. You were never too far gone. You were never damaged beyond repair. The pain tried to lie to you. The silence tried to shame you. The dysfunction tried to define you. But none of those things had the final word. God did. And here is what he says. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. Psalm 139:14. You are more than a conqueror. Romans 8:37. You are a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a chosen generation. 1 Peter 2:9. You were never broken. You were becoming. You were being reshaped. You were being refined. You were being hidden, so that when the time came, you could be revealed. Let's talk about that hidden season. Every chosen one goes through a chrysalis phase. It's the part of the journey where you feel unseen, forgotten, even discarded. Everything you thought was stable begins to shift. People fall away. Dreams seem delayed. Your voice feels silenced. But what looks like isolation is actually transformation. Just like a caterpillar enters the cocoon, confused, unrecognizable, still and silent, you entered a divine process where God began to restructure your life from the inside out. And when that process is complete, you emerge, not as the same person, not as who you were before the pain, but as the healed, wise, spiritually equipped version of yourself you were always destined to become. Matthew 5:14-16 says, You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Let your light shine before others that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. You were hidden, not because you were broken. You were hidden because your light was still being formed, and now it's time to shine. Let me be honest. Some people still won't understand you. Some family members will still speak to the version of you they think they know. Some people will try to call you back into old patterns, old roles, old limitations. But they are not your mirror anymore. They don't get to define you. God already did. Your identity doesn't come from your upbringing. It comes from your anointing. Your worth doesn't come from your bloodline. It comes from your calling. And your power doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from being aligned. So here's the final revelation. You weren't sent into your family to be consumed by it. You were sent to redeem it. You weren't sent into pain to stay there. You were sent to extract wisdom, strength, compassion, and rise. You weren't sent into dysfunction to echo it. You were sent to interrupt it. You were never broken. You were being prepared to be the proof that healing is possible. So now, what do you do with this revelation? You live it. You live boldly. You live healed. You live awake, aware, and aligned with heaven's blueprint over your life. You no longer shrink to make others comfortable. You no longer carry shame for other people's choices. You no longer feel guilt for outgrowing the pain. And when you walk in alignment, you become a light for others who are still trapped in the same kind of darkness you once knew intimately. That is why your story matters. That is why your voice matters. Because you are the evidence that trauma doesn't get the final say. You are the evidence that God still rewrites stories. You are the evidence that divine assignments are real. And so is the victory that comes after obedience. You are not a victim. You are not cursed. You are not fragile. You are chosen. You are rising. You are becoming. And every time you show up in truth, every time you love with healthy boundaries, every time you speak life over yourself, you're living proof that brokenness is not your identity. You were never broken. You were always becoming. You were always being built to carry something sacred. And now that you've seen it, now that you know the truth, there is no going back. Let them call you different. Let them call you intense. Let them say you changed.